Welcome back to another tutorial, guys, and we're trying to achieve another really tropical look. So we've got to bring up the shadows, bring up the whites, warm up the greens, warm up the yellows. But let's just get over to their Instagram. I'll show you guys the image that they have sent me. So as you guys know, you guys go give them a follow down in the description. I'm always putting the creators link down there. So if you like their work, go follow them down in the description and let them know you found them through this tutorial. That would be awesome. So if we come down, so this image, for example, the blues are very bright, so we've got to bring up the luminance of the blues, and the blues are very teal, so we've got to shift in the HSL slider the blues away from a purple towards a green, and then you get more of a teal. And then as for the texture to the water, it's very crispy and shiny, and clarity will really help us achieve that. So looking at some more images, this is the one we're going to be working with, so recreating this exact edit the best we can. And yeah, if you guys really like their style, really bright, very tropical, you guys go check out their work over at their website. So they've got YouTube as well, website. So anyone that's after any guides or anything like that, feel free to come over and check out all their stuff. But yeah, if we go back over to their Instagram and we come down, I just want to talk a little bit about the settings for this shot. So this was taken on a Canon 5D Mark III. It was a JPEG, so we don't have the information for the lens, but it was taken at 20mm, so nice and wide, capturing everything, making it look nice and grand and stretching it out. F4, so it'll pretty much get the entire image in focus, especially the two subjects there. ISO 100 because it's a bright day, don't need a high ISO at all, and then a pretty fast shutter speed of 800 because we only want to let in a little bit of light, otherwise you would overexpose the image in bright sunlight like this. So yeah, that's about it. If we come back, yeah, if you guys like their content, go give them a follow down in the description. Let's get into Lightroom, see if we can create something like this. Here's the unedited image that they sent me, and then a screenshot from their Instagram. So I'll just show you the cropping to start off with, and as you can see, we had to straighten the horizon, just lined it up with the edge of the pool there, and then crop in at 4:5 for Instagram. So go back to where we were, and let's get into this edit. So for starters, I would want to enable profile corrections. So if I just find that, but we are working with a JPEG, so we don't have that information to use that. But what is different about this image at the moment is that the distortion is a little off. So here's their image. You can see how our image kind of shifts every time we change images. So either it's profile corrections that is creating that change, or what they've done is added a bit of distortion, and I see this quite a bit, is they increase the distortion, and see how the image looks larger. It looks like it's a wider lens because you're slightly stretching it, and if you just do it a little bit, you can get away with a much more grand image. Because it's all stretched out, looks wider. So now if we go back and forth, here's theirs, you can see we look much more similar, but we sort of stretch sideways. So see how theirs is like wider, and then come back to ours and we're sort of squished in. That's because the distortion has done that. So to correct the wideness of it, we'll come down to aspect and we'll go in this direction. And we'll just correct what we just did. And now that sort of stretched us wider. And now if we go between their image and our image, now the image, the distortion of the image and everything looks very similar. Very similar. So yeah, now we can get into this edit and try to make all the colors and contrast the same as well. Okay, coming up the top here, let's bring up the exposure to get us closer to where we want to be. So obviously a really bright and vibrant look to the image. Bring down the highlights. Bringing down the highlights is something I see all the time. It really brings back lots and lots of detail in the brighter areas. Bring out the shadows. So when you get rid of the shadows out of an image, it just creates the image, it makes the image appear much more warm. You take out the shadows, seems much more vibrant and sunnier. So these areas are very, very bright. So I'm gonna bring up the whites a lot. And as you can see, they're probably too bright. If you look up here, we're really clipping all these areas, means you're going past the point of no return for detail. So we are gonna add later just a little fade. You can see how that fades out the highlights there. Also shifts our histogram there. So we're just gonna do a little bit of that later. But before we do that, we need to drop the blacks. So if we look in areas like this, we just don't have that sort of harshness to the blacks. We almost do, but I know we want to add a little bit of a fade as well. And now they're really not dark at all. So I know we're gonna have to drop them. Yeah, maybe drop the contrast a bit because we want to bring down the shadows. Hardly ever want to bring up the shadows and the curves. Right. We definitely want clarity. So clarity creates like the crispy look. Really helps sell the vibrant look as well, because it kind of adds a bit of brightness. In this image, it kind of darkens it a bit if you bring it up lots. We are going to put it about there, and sort of just, it creates a nice effect, especially to the water. So if you bring that up, really crispy and sharp. We'll add a bit of vibrance. Again, we're going for a really vibrant, warm look to the image, so we'll just bring up vibrance a bit. Okay, now we will touch up our curve better. We've got it kind of close by doing roughly what we want. Bringing up the blacks, keeping those shadows at about that line there, and then the whites down a bit. So let's do the curves properly. Okay, so that's the curves done, and for this point, for example, the white point, I know to bring that down by, well, I can tell just by looking at it that there is a fade to the highlights and whites. And when you make your whites so bright like this, you want to bring down the curves, because otherwise they can look very harsh. And if we just click their image in, so this is their image now, this is their histogram. You can see how it's not quite touching the white point there. So we come back to our one. We want to come back to our one. And yeah, we want to get it nice and bright, but not touching the end. We're not quite there yet. We don't have it exactly the same as theirs, but as you can see, getting it nice and bright there. And then we know to bring up the black point, because if we look at areas like here, or over here, you can see we've just got that little bit of fade there. So if I just drop these, you can see how there's just no fade. And then we've got a little bit of fade in there. Okay, let's do some split toning now. So we just want to, you could do this after the HSL, or you'd probably realistically go back and forth between the HSL and shadows. I'll just show you. I want to cool off these whites. So if you just look straight at these whites down here, they look a little yellow to me. And then if I look over here, they look quite blue. So there's no real color in them, they're just white, but that tells me that there's been a cast of blue put onto the image. So either by bringing down the temperature, or in the curves in here, or split tonings, but we'll do it in split toning, as I think that will be an easy way to do it. So I'm going to start with putting some in the highlights. So I'm going to choose a nice blue. About there. And the shadows, you'll see later on in the edit a lot why I did this to the shadows especially. As you can see, we're making, it says it's putting it in the shadows, but it very, very often affects the image as a whole. So that also makes our whites a bit more blue. Right, let's move on to HSL, and with HSL we should get pretty close to all our colors. So let's start with the obvious ones, so like these greens, let's desaturate them. And now they look quite blue, which we don't want, so let's warm them up to more of a yellow. And then let's look at our yellows. So these yellows here, if we just slide this back and forth, they look too saturated. So as you can see, really saturated there. Let's bring them down. And now if you just look, something looks off about the grass. Like it has no shine to it. This one's very crispy looking and it has a lot of shine. So a very important thing, or a very common thing, is to add brightness and the luminance to the yellows and the greens for the style. This is a very tropical looking style, so adding luminance to the yellows will create a very vibrant look, because the yellows is the edges of almost everything. Like the sun is hitting all these objects, so if you bring up the luminance of the yellows, you very, very often get a very vibrant, bright looking image. And same with the greens. We'll make them look nice and shiny, but not too much, not as much as the yellows. Okay, right, let's do maybe our oranges and skin tones. So we obviously look way too yellow. We need more of a red or a deeper orange. Let's shift them, the yellows. So the yellows are affecting the greens also, so that's something you've got to watch out for. So what I'll do in this case is I'd move the greens, and you see how the greens isn't affecting this at all, this object here. But when I shift the yellows, it is affecting that object. So I'd probably, but then the oranges are affecting it also. So you're trying to, over here is somewhere, just this little bit here is probably the only bit in the image that only the yellows affect. So I'm just going to try and match them up. The really warm yellow. Okay, so oranges, we obviously need more of a red. We're very yellow at the moment. Let's go this way. And then we need to drop the saturation. As for reds, you can see that affects a lot of the skin tone. Let's shift them way over to the orange, because we don't want that red pink look in them. And then we definitely need to desaturate them. Take it all the way down. Now, tropical looks, you quite often want like rich skin tones. So dropping the luminance deepens the color. So let's drop the luminance, the reds. And the oranges, let's drop the luminance to get those rich colors, the deeper oranges. Okay, our blues, maybe let's try some blues. We're actually too saturated in our oranges probably. So let's bring them down. Now let's work with our blues. So we want this nice teal that shines quite nicely. So for starters, we'll change the hue. to more of a light blue there. Then aquas, it's kind of the same. Go for that light blue. Then we definitely need to drop the saturation of the blues. In the aquas, so the aquas are affecting more so this area of the pool, not the deeper blues, so the brighter blues. And we'll drop them. And bringing up the luminance of the blues also, when you're trying to give this shiny, bright, vibrant, tropical look, bringing up the luminance, so the colors of the blues, will also do that. And the aquas, we'll definitely bring them up, get that nice shine right there, and in those towels there. Leave it at 100. Okay, luminance of the purples. I always just bring these up a touch if it's a tropical look. There's not many of these colors in the image. Leave them about there. Sometimes they're in the skin tones, but quite often there's hardly any of them in the image. And then I'll just bring them down roughly with everything else. And then I sometimes shift them just a bit closer to the reds because quite often don't want the purples creeping in. When they are there, that is. Because I actually started this edit with my tropical preset. I thought that looked really, I think it's called Tropical Pop, my preset. And that got us really close to this one. And now I've obviously done some tweaks and that to it. And yeah, that's what that preset had for purples and magentas. Okay, on to sharpening in that. So this is a screenshot. It's hard to tell the sharpening, but we'll just do a little bit. You can't really see any grain, but I would still just put a little bit in, so like 10. The skin tones might be a little off at the moment. So if you come down here, like we look a little too red or purple in the skin tones. So maybe like you can't shift the reds any further across. So what I'm thinking is maybe I should have done some work down here and shifted the red primary, but as you can see that shifts the greens as well, but it lets you go past the 100 because you can't go any further than plus 100 or minus 100. So we're kind of stuck with those slightly red skin tones. Also, and same with, you can't go below 100 saturation, but as you can see those colors are still there. So I'm thinking maybe I should have done some work down here, get past having those red skin tones, and then maybe dropping the saturation, and then adjusting the greens and that to that. But I'm actually pretty happy like that. I think I'll just leave it there, keep these tutorials as short as possible while explaining every step. So yeah, I'll just leave it there. Here's our before and after. Remember that distortion we did at the start to make the image look a little more grand and big. Actually, if I just come back down to split toning, I'll just shift this to a bit more of a blue. We look a touch off there. Let's go with maybe there. And the reason I put blue in the shadows is way back there, especially in the mountains and stuff. If you see if we put no coolness in the shadows and we don't cool it off up the top here, we have like really warm shadows just naturally. So that's why I reckon we needed to add in some coolness. and adding the coolness in back there sort of brings out those greens again, which is very hard to get. So I think you can see how we add more blues, it brings back those greens way back in the background, and that's what we have over in the image. But say if I get rid of those blues, you see how it's almost red back there, and we haven't added in any warmth into the shadows or anything like that. So that's why I put those greens into, those light blues into the shadows there. I'd maybe shift them a little bit towards the purples or blues, just because we're looking a little green, I think. The whole image maybe, especially the highlights, look a little green. Might just shift them that way. And yeah, I might just leave it. I'll just leave it there, guys. All right, there's our before and after.